welcome to the Let's Talk Kids Health Facebook Live Show, episode 27. I'm Dr. Narissa Bauer, your host. I'm a behavioral pediatrician and blogger of Let's Talk Kids Health. As you know, the concept of this show is to share information about behavioral health and wellness for children and families everywhere. Each week, I plan to bring you topics and guests to help me advance this mission so that we can all talk together. Now remember, this show is actually pre-recorded, and anytime you want to drop a comment and do so, please do it, and we will make sure to answer those questions at a later time. Now, if you're watching this and you think, gosh, so-and-so would really benefit from listening or watching, please share, because sharing is caring. And if you don't want to miss future episodes or maybe check out the past ones, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, and follow my blog Facebook page, Let's Talk Kids Health. Okay, so now on to this week's guest. Let's welcome Stephanie Whiteside. Stephanie is a licensed clinical social worker and mental health therapist with 17 years of experience in child and adolescent mental health. Stephanie currently serves as the mental health coordinator of Carmel Clay Schools in Indiana, where she currently leads all district-wide social emotional learning initiatives and oversees the district mental health services. I am so excited to have Stephanie on the show. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And, I've been looking forward to having this discussion because, as you know, we're going to be talking about mental health in schools in the era of COVID, which we're still in. And I think I've been getting a lot of questions about this, so I am really excited to have you on. But before we get started, maybe I'll ask you to explain what exactly is a mental health coordinator.
Well, thank you so much for asking that, because I do get a lot of questions about my role since it's relatively new. I've been here for about 2 years. And really, my primary role is to consult and support our administrators and our buildings to ensure that we're providing, beneficial services to our students, that we're recognizing social emotional needs, and we're meeting those needs with just various supports. I oversee some of our partnerships, especially our mental health partnerships, to ensure that we're able to address any mental health needs that our students have. And then I also oversee some of our social emotional learning initiatives as well. I work very closely with our counselors and social workers to ensure that they receive professional development and consultation as needed to make sure that we are really addressing the whole child.
I can't tell you how excited I was when I learned that you were hired. I remember receiving the magazine with your picture on the cover, and I thought, oh my goodness, what a wonderful thing that the schools district is doing, paying attention to the mental health of our students. So needed.
I absolutely agree. It's so wonderful to see where mental health has come. And really how much our students and families support just overall mental wellness.
Yes, mental wellness. I love that. Thank you for saying that, because again, this is so important. And as you know, you are perfect for this show because that's what we talk about all the time. So why don't we get right into it? Because I know that as the schools start again, I mean, we're, end of July here pretty much. And families are now starting to think about reentry to school. So let's start with the general strategies. Like, what are some general strategies to help prepare students for reentry into school?
Great question. I know that for many families, especially their children, there's a lot of excitement around starting school, even in a typical year. They're excited to see their friends, they're excited to see their teachers. However, some students may have a little bit more anxiety when it comes to going back to school. So they may be anxious about some of those social interactions. They may be worried about academics and where they're at and what they'll be learning. Many of our students are engaged in all different types of extracurricular activities as well. And so it is so important to start talking about that now as we prepare to go back to school. So some of the strategies that parents can utilize to support their students as they're going back to school, I would say number one is just starting those rituals and routines right away. So starting that bedtime routine, starting just those different hygiene routines that they know that they're going to be doing once school starts, because as we know, repetition really helps so that when time comes, We don't want to be anxious about running late or missing a class. And, we know that when students are able to have a pretty easygoing morning where everything falls into place, they're going to have a much better day. So I would say start practicing those routines now. Talk about what it's going to look like, what those expectations are, and, really discuss in depth. Along with that, I think it's a great time to start talking about what are you worried about or anxious about when it comes to returning to the school. And let's just, start talking about it and problem solving. I'd really be careful not to jump in to that. I would, allow your child to have an opportunity to try to problem solve or think of how they may address some of those challenges that they could potentially experience. However, you also want to balance that out with what are you excited about? What are you looking forward to this year? Because we really, want to instill hope and provide that encouragement. And so I think it's a great time to talk about the fun things that'll be going on and what they're going to learn. I think also along with that, it really helps to identify, one or two goals that they would have for themselves that year. I always find that it's fun to identify those goals. And then at the end of the school year, take a look at those goals, see how far they've come. I think it really helps to instill that sense of accomplishment. And, it really gives them a sense of pride that, they are able to, come up with those strategies on their own, and they're able to see their own growth as well.
Yes.
I always say that it's so important to also have a self-care plan. So we're going to start working with kids, right away on when things get stressful, how do we find that balance? And, how can we help ourselves through some of those stressful times? So different mindfulness activities, deep breathing, but then also having those times to just, like us adults, you need to unplug, you need to relax and, fill your tank, whether that's, social interactions or, some of those physical activities. We really just want to make sure that our students are balanced as they're coming back to school.
Yeah, I love those different strategies that you addressed. I mean, so you talked about consistency, routine, starting those conversations early, so that you don't just wait till the night before, and then also instilling hope and asking the child themselves what are their worries, but then balancing that out for what they're excited about, right? I love that. And then setting goals. Wow. I mean, that's really thinking proactively. And I wish I had done that last year with my kids, but I will do it this year, because I love sort of that vision of, okay, what's your one goal or two goals? And then where are you at the end of the school year? Did you meet it? I love that. And so I think those are really wonderful, tangible, practical strategies for families, especially as we think about reentry. So, Stephanie, I know that some families and some students opted to do remote learning, either as hybrid or 100% virtual, and now are going to be transitioning back to school. What other additional strategies would you recommend for kids and their parents in having that conversation about reentry?
Right. And I think, once again, I think many students are going to be excited to see their friends and see their teachers again. And some, once again, are going to be anxious. And so I think really it's going to be revisiting, what are the procedures at the school? So what can they expect when they get off that bus or when they're dropped off at school that day? What are the hygiene procedures that the school has to promote health and wellness? And then also what they can do to, kind of help themselves feel more comfortable and cope with that transition. I think that really talking with them about how they can, build in breaks and then how they can transition. And I think it's really starting with small incremental steps. So not expecting that they're going to go into school and everything is going to go back to the way it was prior to them going virtual. So I think it's really important just to talk about that and recognize that it may take a bit of time for them to get back into the groove of things and back into the routine. I think also discussing a plan for if you feel overwhelmed, if you feel worried, if you need a break, who are the adults in your building that you trust and can go to? Mm-hmm. And I think that is just very important so that that students understand that we are not expecting them to, once again, come in and take up from where they left off. We really want them to get acclimated and take the time that they need to be acclimated to the building.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I like that pre-planning so that way in the moment, should they be stressed, should they be overwhelmed, they at least have a plan in place. So I think a lot of parents will appreciate that little tidbit. So again, COVID sort of just surprised a lot of us. And there's been a lot of questions from parents about, how to address the lost time in the classroom and disrupted academic instruction. I know there's a lot of stress on behalf of the parents thinking about this and probably from students. Do you have any sort of thoughts on this?
Yeah, so not only as a therapist, but as a parent myself, I know that this is a real concern that we've experienced. Not only academic instruction, but also, social interactions too, and how our children grow socially. And so that's definitely something that, we often talk about here at the district and are prepared to address as well. And so I think it's really important that although we're really focusing on that academic growth, that we are also considering, what needs to be in place before our students can really launch and get into the, academic, rigors of the curriculum. And so I think it's really important that we're really talking about how to access some of those executive skills, which we know that it's really about being in a state of relaxation, being able to access their memory, being able to reason and to connect concepts. And so in order to do that, we really have to start with social emotional learning. So really helping our students feel secure, helping them feel that there's some stability and predictability to their day. And then also helping them feel connected, not only to their peers, but also to the adults in the building as well. And so if they know, what to do when they're feeling overwhelmed or when they're feeling stressed, then they're able to tap into some of those skills so that they're able to relax and they're able to learn. And so once again, I think, I always say no pressure. We really want to make sure that we are meeting our students where they're at. And so really taking it a step at a time. I know we do a lot at the beginning of the year just to really assess where our students are at and what their needs are to help them acclimate to the building and acclimate to the curriculum and the day-to-day routine. And I think that is just such an important, piece of this, especially now with last year looking so different for so many of our students.
Yeah, no, that's great. And again, I think I just commend Carmel Clay Schools in general because that's where our kids go for handling last year and the year prior, the half year prior so well. I thought you guys did wonderfully. And, amazingly, my elementary school child got to go 5 days a week. So you guys really had some really good protocols in place. I mean, she felt safe the whole time. And she even got used to wearing her masks. She said when she didn't wear her mask, it felt weird. So, so kids are really resilient. And I have no doubt that even though there's some anxiety about what this next school year brings, that we're going to get through it.
Thank you so much for saying that, because it has always been our priority to do what we can to, keep our students together. We recognize the importance of having that, peer-to-peer relationship. We also recognize the importance of the teacher-student relationship. And so it was really a goal of ours to, even though we knew going into it that things are going to look a little bit different, we were going to try to instill some normalcy, as much as we could.
Yeah, and that was so helpful for the mental health of my own children, but for a lot of the children that I saw in my own private practice, if they got to go in person and see their friends, even though they were, behind masks or they couldn't sort of congregate around lockers or they had to stay in certain areas in the playgrounds, like they adapted. So,
right.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, as the mental health coordinator, what are schools doing? Maybe not just Carmel Clay, but anywhere else that you know of. What are they doing to address those social emotional needs of students?
Yes, so I will tell you, even this summer, we started going, we are preparing. And so many of our teachers and our administrators are really diving into professional development and really, developing their toolbox. We have amazing professionals at all of our schools that really support social emotional learning and recognize the importance and how that relates to academic achievement. And so we are really focusing on those, that first month, those first days back, and how we're going to, just establish that routine, but then also how we're going to assist parents and students with identifying the resources that they need and us identifying how we can support them. And so we're really looking at, how do we embed social emotional learning into our everyday? So whether it's academics, whether it's extracurricular activities, even at recess, those are always opportunities for us to grow in our social emotional skill set. And so we really try to utilize those, I call them like organic moments where, we're always interacting, we are social beings. And so naturally the classroom is a great place for us to learn those skills. And I think that this year we're going to have a great opportunity to be able to do that with having more students in person. And so we're really, revisiting, conscious discipline, brain state models, and identifying just how we can continue to support our students. We'd like to do, we've been looking at brain breaks and how we can continue to allow students that time when they do need a break. As we know, the elementary and even up to high school attention span, isn't as high as the adults there. And so they're going to need some breaks, especially if they've come off of virtual learning where, you can take a break whenever you feel like that. And we know that sometimes a small break goes a long way. And so we want to make sure that, we're keeping that in mind. When we talk about returning to school, I think it's always interesting because the conversation isn't about how do we go all the way back to, what we did before the pandemic. We've learned since then, and we really identify some of the improvements that we've made, some of the things that we've learned, and we're really incorporating that into the classroom. So you're no longer going to see, in any school, I think, going to see students at a desk, most of the time. We really like to utilize different, teaching strategies and techniques and balancing group work with, individual work, with movement, just really addressing, those individual needs of the students so that they're able to, enjoy school and really learn.
Yeah, and that's the bottom line. We want our kids to be learning, but we also want them to have fun and feel safe. Yeah, and I think, if I may, I think I have been getting, some questions from private practice clients about, younger kids and masks. And I've been telling them that, because at this point in time they're not able to get vaccinated, hopefully soon, that they should still continue wearing masks. I think that's just for safety. And I think a lot of the kids, when I actually talk to them about it, because they come to see me in their masks as well, they're used to that. So at least that's what I've been telling my own patients, my own family. My one child, she's not yet 12, so she's not vaccinated. So I'm still wearing a mask with her when I'm out, and even though I'm fully vaccinated. So I know that that's going to be a topic of discussion for a lot of families as we approach the school year, and different school districts might have different sort of guidance, or they're following things from the CDC and the state health departments. So it can be different for a lot of different areas in the country. But I know that especially for the young ones, that continuing to mask is going to be important for at least the time being. So. And any other things that we want to just share with the families? Any other topics that you've gotten any questions on that pertain to the coming school year?
Sure. So I know that I often get questions about what resources are in the building, how do I access some of those resources? And so I really think it's important that if a resource is needed, we're constantly looking at students and saying, what do they need? What are those areas of growth that we can continue to support, and what are the interventions we need to put into place to ensure that that happens? And so even as a parent, if you find that there's a resource or a support that you need, we have, many different professionals in the building that are able to help and support, including our building administrators and assistant principals. We also have social workers, counselors, psychologists. We also do have a partnership with a mental health entity as well, Extension St. Vincent, where we're able to make referrals, but then we also utilize outside private practices as well, just depending on the needs of the students.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think sometimes we are just a great starting point for looking for those resources, because we often hear about things going on in the community. We like to collect resources, in case they're ever needed. And so, if it's a mentor, if it's a tutor, if it's a, mental health professional, once again, I think a great place to start is, with your building administrator or school social worker or counselor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think also just continue to keep in touch with the school. If you're having concerns, if you're wanting to hear how your student's doing, I think that connection is so important. And it's so important that, the adults in the school are on the same page with parents, so that, we're just better able to provide consistency for that student.
Right, right. And so I love that. I know schools are, kind of where kids spend most of their time. And I love that schools typically will know and have that list of resources for families. So not forgetting to tap into that network of folks and that list from the schools as well. So thank you so much for talking with me today, Stephanie. It was such a great episode, and I know that there's going to be a lot of questions potentially after watching this, so we will make sure to kind of monitor any comments or questions and get to them. So I do want to just say that if anybody watching has suggestions for future topics or guests, please feel free to reach out to me at letstalkkidshealth@gmail.com. Drop me a comment below or just message me on social media. And again, remember, consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, Narissa Bauer MD, so that you can be alerted every time that I go live each week. I will want to say that my next week's guest is Dr. Nicole Stieber, who will be talking to us about postpartum anxiety and depression. It will be a really great episode. Again, thank you so much for joining me, Stephanie. It was so great to have you on finally.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. And we'll see you again.